Overall, I thought this has been a really good camp for all of us, including the coaches. And we had our last basically team meeting this morning. And what I want to make sure I stress to the players are throughout this whole deal from phase 1 all the way into phase 3, they started creating some habits. And I want to say habits are good habits. And as you leave the building, man, I don't want those habits to go away. I want them to continue to think about those habits. And also through this whole deal, man, it has been about our process on how we want to operate as a team, from who we want to be, how we want to do it, and not really totally focused on how we win and the vision for winning, because I think there's a lot of time to be able to talk about that. So it was more or less about our process going into training camp, and then as we get that nailed down, now let's talk about how we're going to win and our vision for winning. I think for me, that's something I've always believed in. And I think our players really understood that, talking to them this morning. So, listen, I'm very proud of all those guys. Again, overall, I think we had about 91% of the guys that was here. I'm talking about through all the phases. And I think the best team I've been around when it comes to that was about 80%. So those guys trumped that. And listen, I can't be more pleased to finish this offseason up, with those guys being able to do that. So, listen, I'm looking forward to training camp. I hate that things are ending now, and we got to take this month off, but I understand it. But guns are blazing once we get back here and go to training camp. So, any questions?
We've spent a lot of time talking to you about an option next to Garrett.
Yeah.
Any of those offensive linemen show you anything?
Absolutely not. Listen, obviously, I've been a part of a team where we used our linemen to catch passes, and that's going to be a work in progress, I'll tell you that.
I know you're probably never fully happy, but did you feel like you accomplished a lot of what you wanted to accomplish in this time?
It's as a coach, you're always going to say, nah, we didn't get everything we want to get done. But listen, I think the players understand exactly what we're trying to accomplish. I feel like that. But I do understand there's a lot more work to be done. And listen, we're ripping pages out of some situations that we want to get better at. And we want to create our own narrative. And we want to write our own book. And that's what the focus will be going into training camp is, man, how do we rip the pages out of some situations that we don't like, all right, and make sure we start writing the narrative of how we're going to operate throughout the season and throughout training camp. So when it's all said and done, this is going to be a book that a lot of people like to read.
Today was a regular practice.
Yeah.
How do you balance as a coach being finding the line of being a disciplinarian versus also, I don't know, you probably don't like the term players coach, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sort of like meeting in that way, so to speak.
I think for the most part, as a coach, you always want the discipline part to be on point. I mean, you're never getting away from that. But also, there's you have to have an eye for it. And I think my ability to have played it for a long time and coach it for a long time, that I know when enough is enough. I know when to push. I know when to hold back. I do know when it's time to have a little fun. And for the guys out there, that were the linemen out there catching passes, it was time for those guys to get a chance to do that. Listen, they've worked their asses off this whole offseason, and I haven't had any complaints on how we do things. I'll tell you what, I'm out there talking to Quincy, and Quincy said, Coach, the reason I knew that things were changing because there was no bitching about anything as far as how we do things, because we are doing things different. And I told guys, once we start to create our culture, then we're going to start understanding this is the way we do things. And it might not be the way other people do it, and I'm okay with that. But I believe this is the right way to do it. And we all have to understand that this is the way that we do things. Nobody else but us. So I thought that was pretty good.
We spoke to Sauce and talked about just, being more of a leader. Just from your perspective, how has he done that? And how has he done this also?
Here's what I want Sauce to do, and here's what I'll talk to him about who he needs to be is when you do lead, just let your influence do all the talking. Like, how do you operate in the huddle with the players, in the locker room? that speaks more than the rah-rah guy. And he understands that, because influence to me is what really leadership is about. Like, how do you influence your other teammates? How do you influence people around you no matter what? And I think he's done a really good job of that. And sometimes you have to sit back and talk to players about that, because sometimes players think that leadership is about, I got to call the guys up and talk about this. I have to be in the locker room. No, man, just be yourself and influence people the right way. And he's done a really good job of that.
I think Steve Wilkes said yesterday that you guys want to practice tackling in training camp like it's a point of emphasis.
Yeah.
A lot of teams really, I mean, not every team does like tackling anymore.
Yeah.
Why is that so important?
It's a tackling sport. So in this game, you got to block and you got to tackle. And the only way you get good at that craft is to do it. So I'm a firm believer in it. The players understand, they know that, and they want to get better. And if we want to be one of the better tackling teams and one of the better blocking teams in this league, at some point you have to do it. Now, I'm not saying you got to sit here and do it every day, and you also got to have a quick whistle, but there are times when you just have to practice and you have to do it.
I'm sure you mapped out before this all started like the way you wanted it to go.
Yeah.
This is also your first time doing it, so how much of that was where you had to be flexible, and how do you expect that process of learning for you to go from here moving forward?
Yeah. I give a lot of credit to Coach Campbell in Detroit, because he allowed me to actually act in the position of being head coach, to be able to do the calendar for the offseason, plan training camp out, be able to make decisions that he was supposed to make, but he allowed me to make those decisions to get me ready to be in this position. And the one thing I do know, that every day there's a thought process on, man, how am I protecting the players, and how am I putting the players in the best position to improve? And I actually enjoy that, because at the end of the day, the players need to know that you care. And when you think like that, when you operate that way, I think there becomes buy-in from everybody, even from the staff, because they see that too. So I enjoyed every process this offseason of being the head coach here. And I've said this before, when I first got the job, there's no other place I would rather have it than here with the Jets. And you guys know the reasons why, but I'm enjoying every day of this here.
You've talked a lot about leadership, culture, obviously.
Yeah.
As a player, were there guys that you looked at, and as you were kind of thinking through the process, that guy's a leader, this is what a leader is?
That was easy. Ronnie Lott, was a guy that, not only that, not being with him and seeing how he operated, and then getting a chance to have a locker right next to him and seeing how he operated. And listen, back then it was totally different. So when you had injury, some of the things that I saw him do was just, I don't know if I'd have did that, but he was the real deal. Boomer Esiason was another guy. James Hasty was another guy. Johnny Johnson. I can go down the line of the guys that I looked up to here, being here, who I thought really showed leadership skills. And even then, I really didn't know what leader was or leadership was. But as I go back and think about how those guys operated, I thought Ronnie Lott was one of the guys that, to this day, I would say, yeah, this guy's a leader because of his influence.
Aaron, nickel cornerback has become such an important position in this league.
Yeah.
What do you see from Michael Carter that, he grades out analytically as one of the best in the league? What have you seen from him in terms of that spot?
Well, the good thing about him now, he's healthy, and he has twitch. He's tough. He understands the nickel position. And once you start to play that position, because you have to start to understand exactly what's going on with the front. So you just can't be a guy that's out on the edge and listen, I got my guy. There's gap integrity that you have to understand. Your ability to cover has to be on point. So not only are you acting as a DB, but you also have to act as a linebacker too. There are certain situations where, you could have turbo motion. They can get you bumped into the paint, and you have to operate as a linebacker. So he does a really good job of that, and he's extremely smart. also. So to have a guy with the skill set that he has, and that's extremely smart, like those are the type of guys you really want at the nickel spot. So he's doing a good job for us.
A couple more. I know you're not going to give us your vision or exact idea.
Well, please don't ask.
But how much did getting to know these guys on and off the field kind of shape whatever your vision or identity is that you're going to build moving forward?
Listen, that's something that I do no matter what. So it wasn't a sense of that shaping how I operate. I've always been the type of coach that not only do I want to know who they are on the field, but who they are off the field and get to know them as a person. And I think you've heard from a lot of guys that came here and talked that I've had conversations with those guys, one-on-one conversations with them in my office, just to talk, just get to know who those guys, who they are. I'm a firm believer in if you know the person, then you start to figure out what buttons to push to get them to do things a certain way. And if you just know them as a football player, you really don't really understand that. And I learned that from Coach Parcells because he knew how to push my buttons. and because he knew me, though. He knew me as a person first and foremost, which allowed him to be able to do that. So I think it's important as a coach to be able to do that. And, again, it's just who I am as a coach, to be able to know him on the field and off the field.
Last one, Coach.
You know you're focused on here.
Yeah.
Now that our team is, but your week one opponent signed a quarterback over the weekend.
Yeah.
What's your feeling about?
I'm trying to hold this smile in. I really am. Because I was waiting on that.
I know you're waiting on it. I wasn't going to disappoint you. Last question of the offseason. What's your feeling about the challenge of facing Aaron Rodgers in week one?
We have 17 really good games that we got to play. And I'm looking forward to playing every one of them.
Okay, let me get a follow-up. Your guy doesn't like a lot of noise around the team. We've seen that.
Say it again.
You don't like a lot of noise. You don't like a lot of, you're trying to avoid distractions. There's going to be a lot of noise going into that game.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Do you worry about that at all as a coach?
Listen, this is the NFL, and to me, every game there's a lot of noise because they're so critical as far as wins and losses, and we want to try to accumulate as many wins as we can. And I don't care who that opponent is. All right. If it's a high school team, we want to beat them. If it's a college team, we want to beat them. It just so happened to be Pittsburgh. And listen, they have a lot of good players on that team. They have a damn good coach who I'm fond of. But our players are going to be ready to play every game, and I know that for a fact.